Still waiting for Lisa, I assume.
Yes, we are still waiting for Lisa. And Letitia let me know that she is traveling in the car for probably the first 15 to 30 minutes of the meeting. So she's gonna stay off camera so she can concentrate on safely driving.
Good, good.
Please be safe, Letitia.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Morning, Lisa.
Good morning, everyone.
All right, and I will go ahead and launch the recording.
Lisa, will you be leading us through the agenda today?
Had not thought about it, but let me find the agenda and I can do that.
Okay.
Thank you. We probably bring it up.
Thanks.
Okay. Found it. All right, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Colorado River Drought Subtask Force. It's December 8th. This is our final meeting. Welcome to the Subtask Force members and anyone who is on virtually. I guess we'll do a roll call. I'll just use my screen. Steve Wolf.
I'm here.
Celine Hawkins.
Here.
Becky Mitchell.
Here.
And Letitia Yazzie.
Here.
Great. We are all present. I am Lisa Yellow Eagle, representative for Southern Ute Indian Tribe, and we have a final agenda that was sent out last week. Has everyone reviewed the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
And let's do a quick vote to approve the agenda for today. Steve?
I'm fine with it. Yep, no changes.
Okay. Letitia?
Fine with it.
Celine?
Fine with it.
And Becky?
Fine with it.
Great. Final agenda approved. I don't think we have meeting minutes for the last meeting, do we? Yeah, okay. We were
I
supposed
haven't
to.
seen them.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, that must have slipped through the cracks when I got back from vacation. I will get those sent to you out during this meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm so sorry.
So we'll wait for those meeting minutes and we can review them during one of the breaks, but we are through that first agenda item and we now have a public comment period. So I'll hand that over to Kelsey.
Right. Thank you to everyone attending online. If you are interested in making a public comment during this meeting, now is the time to enter your name into the Q&A. And any names that are put in the Q&A will go through in order. Members of the public have up to 3 minutes to provide a comment to the subtask force. And I'll give you a warning at 30 seconds and then let you know once you've reached your 3 minutes. If you would like to make a written comment, you can submit it either to me or at my email address, which is on the website, on the task force website, crdroughttaskforce.com under the About section. Or there is a public comment box on the bottom of the homepage of the website. If you do have an attachment, it will not go through that way. So you do need to send that to me or any members of the subtask force. I'm going to keep talking to give people a few more minutes to put their names in if they wish to make a public comment. Other information, please put your first and last name in the Q&A if you wish to make a public comment. Do the awkward silence for another 10 seconds. All right,
Okay.
for public comment, yes, go ahead.
All right, so it looks like we don't have any public comments right now. Does the subtask force want to add a public comment period at the end of the meeting to see if anyone has anything to comment on after our discussions?
Sure.
Okay, so let's move that agenda item to the end of the agenda so that we provide another comment period, and maybe there will be more comments after we have our discussions on our proposals. Okay, so next agenda item, discuss final proposals for potential recommendations to the Colorado General Assembly. We have had a working document on the Colorado River Drought Task Force website. And I know that I have included some proposals on behalf of Southern Ute Indian Tribe, and Letitia Yazzie has provided some draft proposals as well on behalf of Ute Mountain Ute Tribe. And shall we just start with alphabetically and go through from A, beginning with A? Does that work for the group?
Sure.
Okay, so proposal A is a request for funding to conduct a study on a potential pilot program to compensate tribes for future forbearance of water development. And I will actually just go ahead and read the proposal as it is. The Southern Ute Indian Tribe and Ute Mountain Ute Tribe both have a water settlement in place. Both tribes have been unable to fully develop those settled and quantified water rights to benefit our homelands and tribal members. There are many challenges that contribute to the inability to develop the water, including lack of infrastructure, lack of funding, and requirements of the settlement. In recent years, the two tribes have watched many water users participate in federal and state programs to conserve or temporarily forbear use of water rights in exchange for monetary compensation. Because the tribes have not already been using this water, they are not authorized to participate in the conservation programs, which require that the forbearance reduce current water that is being beneficially used. In the meantime, downstream junior water users are able to enjoy and become dependent on undeveloped tribal water and potentially participate in those same conservation programs. Thus, the tribes are left in a position of watching their undeveloped water flow downstream to the benefit of others with no ability to receive compensation for it. There is a need for a separate program for tribes to be compensated for that undeveloped water, which is currently benefiting the Colorado River system and junior water users. The subtask force would like to explore whether the state of Colorado and the two tribes are able to develop a pilot program to compensate the two tribes to forbear water development for a set number of years. So the proposal is that the subtask force would submit a request to the Colorado Water Conservation Board to fund a study through the projects bill. We ask the Colorado General Assembly to support the request for funding through the projects bill by CWCB. The study would evaluate potential funding sources for a pilot program, the amount of water the two tribes would want to be compensated for, potential benefits for the state of Colorado, potential benefits to southwestern Colorado, and potential benefits to the Colorado River Basin. In addition, we've discussed what kind of administration is necessary, the time frame for this pilot program, benefits of the forbearance of future water development by the tribes, and any other details that need to come out during this study. And so additional language at the end is that the Tribal Subtask Force recommends and requests that a grant be provided to engage in an expert analysis of the quantity of water potentially available, the impacts of contributing that water to the Colorado River system, the appropriate level of compensation, and all additional technical and fiscal details of such a program. It is anticipated that such an analysis could be done for not more than $200,000, given existing data which can be made available to the analysts. And so this recommendation would not require legislative action. So I'm opening the floor for any comments.
It was interesting. Thank you, Lisa, for allowing for us to have some comments on this. It was interesting as I read it, looking at it on the screen. Hearing you say reading it out loud, I heard it a little differently, and I think that I'm thankful for that. One of the things that came to my mind is exactly who would apply. I think the subcommittee is once we're done, I don't know if we're a formal body that can actually apply, but that one of our pushes to come out of this would be some organization or group apply to the CWCB in this way. I think that I'm completely supportive of this. I think everyone knows that this has been working. We've been working on this not only at the state level, but even in a broader level of that compensation for undeveloped tribal water rights and temporary forbearance issues. And so the thought that came to my mind is, who is the actual applicant and where it should come from. And then the other thought was there was not as much mention of potential legal components to that study that we may want to keep in mind and include in some language, just besides the engineering and administration analysis, but maybe the legal component too, and maybe that's a direction to the AG's office or something like that. But those were just my thoughts, my initial guts after hearing it a little bit of a different way. Very supportive of this. I think it's absolutely necessary. It's more on the process standpoint.
Yeah. And Lisa, yeah, I'm good comments by Becky. Supportive of this. I like the way that you framed it into a study, because I think that's the important piece now. We all know this is an issue that's been talked about a lot, but it gets complicated, and I think the study is the right way to go. So fully supportive of this. I guess just a question on the document itself, and maybe to Letitia, was her last paragraph going to supplant the last paragraph you had written? Was that the intent? Just trying to get the document cleaned up a little bit.
Yeah, I was thinking it could replace it, but if there's parts in Lisa's last paragraph that should remain, then I'm okay with that as well.
Yeah, Letitia, I liked your last paragraph. It kind of made it tighter, I thought, but there were some things in Lisa's paragraph about benefits to the state, benefits to Southwest Colorado, that I thought were important to keep included in it. So just a little editing, and I'm fine with this one. I think it's a good recommendation.
Yeah, I think my questions were just around the technical drafting. I also thought that I think the more specific we can be, the better. And I thought that the specific recommendation around a grant through the projects bill was something worth discussing here. And Becky, if that feels like the right funding path, I think that being more specific is better than being less specific where we can be. So I was thinking that it might be a little bit of a redrafting, trying to get key elements. I agree with Steve. I liked the paragraph talking about the different interests. And I also thought, if we do think that the projects bill is going to be a better space, like there is not an existing grant program within CWCB to pay for this study, then let's be specific about that so the assembly knows that is the recommendation.
I think, just on the initial gut, the projects bill would be the way to go. And that does offer some legislative component that I think the legislators would be, I think it's important that folks be aware of everything that we're doing, and that gives another piece of that. Since we're at the last meeting, I'm gonna have to suggest that that's the way that that's the way that we word it. Letitia, I liked your paragraph add also, and I think yeah, that's good.
If I make a comment, the way that UMount looked at this, we did not. I think the way that I framed it, we did not want to go through the projects bill.
Do you know what the reason was for that?
I prefer not to
Okay.
say.
That is fine. So can we leave it vague at this point? Is that an option?
I'm not looking at it right now, but I think that's the reason why we kind of left it to grants. I think that's why we just left it as grants. Yeah.
So I have a follow-up, Letitia. As far as I know, I feel like we could get in an application to CWCB through the projects bill right now. And then it could go before the General Assembly in, what is that, January or February or January? So if Mountain U does not want to use the projects bill, then I would like to know what the alternative is so that we have a clear path on moving forward. Or are we just going to search for other grants through the year?
Let me think about it for a few minutes.
We're realizing I'm nodding and you can't see that, so just verbalizing it for you, Letitia.
Yeah, that's fine. And Lisa, if we want to move on to the next one until Letitia quits driving, keep things safe, that might be okay.
So the next one is actually a Mountain Ute Tribe proposal B adjustment.
C. You want to go to C?
Sure.
Just go.
So we'll go to proposal C, which is to seek a resolution from the Colorado General Assembly to address funding for the Pine River Indian Irrigation Project. Let me read through this so that people who are listening online will know what proposal we are speaking about. So Southern Ute Indian Tribe is in need of funding for its Pine River Indian Irrigation Project. The PRIP is an Indian irrigation project intended to bring water to tribal lands for agriculture. It was constructed by the Bureau of Indian Affairs during the late 1800s and early 1900s and is still operated by BIA. So the PRIP should be providing water to approximately 12,000 acres and nearly 400 individual water users, including approximately 100 non-Indians and the town of Ignacio. But due to extreme deterioration of its infrastructure, it falls far short of that goal. An assessment of the PRIP commissioned by BIA in 2008 identified a maintenance backlog of over 20 million. A different assessment performed in 2000 by BIA's Office of Trust Responsibility found that the cost to completely rehabilitate the system, including upgrading equipment and other non-structural items, would be closer to 67 million, which would be 109 million in today's dollars. So in 2023, BIA completed a modernization plan for the PRIP, which was a rough cost estimate of 60.7 million. So as you look at all these numbers, you can just see that there is a large amount of money needed to repair and rehab the PRIP. So the tribe started a multi-year duration program to rehabilitate portions of the PRIP using 4.88 million of tribal funding in 2018, but it is running short on funding to finish construction on completed engineering designs. So the condition of the PRIP means that some of its users are unable to access and use water for agricultural irrigation. Despite this condition, users have seen rates for operation and maintenance increase over recent years, even while the PRIP continues to fail to deliver water for their use. PRIP water users pay 100% of the project's operations and maintenance annual assessments. These fees are insufficient to accomplish the necessary annual O&M work, much less the millions required to address deferred maintenance. So funding to address some of the PRIP's needs was authorized in the Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation Act, which is the WIN Act. This was enacted in 2016 and it established the Indian Irrigation Fund in the Department of the Treasury to address the deferred maintenance, repair, and replacement needs of various Indian irrigation projects in the Western US. The WIN Act came as a great relief to Southern Ute, but repairs under the WIN Act met an unexpected delay. While the WIN Act authorized funding for this critical purpose, the actual appropriations and allocations have fallen short. The Act directs the Secretary of Treasury to deposit $35 million annually through fiscal year 2028 into the fund, with such fund sums plus accrued interest to be transferred to the Secretary of the Interior for distribution by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. However, since its inception, Congress has only appropriated $10 million per year for the fund. So not only does the level of appropriation fall short of the demonstrated need, continued delay adds to future costs as deterioration of failing systems continues. So the subtask force seeks a resolution from the Colorado General Assembly to the U.S. Congress to request that it fully appropriate the Indian Irrigation Fund with the $35 million. And that is the proposal. I'd like to open up the floor for any comments.
Steve, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Just a couple of comments. First, fully supportive of this generally. It should happen. Two, question is, A, is there more we can recommend or do as a task force to push this other than just a resolution to the General Assembly? Although I know this is a legislative task force, so it's just something to consider. And I'm also curious how the Colorado General Assembly will look at asking for money for a fund that provides a lot of other states, tribal nations funds as well, instead of just Colorado. It's a question. I don't know that answer, but to fund the WIN Act fully is a great thing. It's going to provide benefits to other tribes. That's also good. But I'm just curious if the Colorado General Assembly might hesitate at doing something outside of their borders. Again, just a question. Fully supportive of the needs here.
I had a different version of that question, which was whether it would, and it was along the lines of, is it just a recommendation for a resolution, but it was whether there would be more impact if the governor of Colorado signed it, and whether that is an opportunity for the task force recommend that the assembly work with the governor. And just having just heard your question, Steve, my thought is that we can make this recommendation, and if the legislature wants to do something, I think that we as a task force, or perhaps as the tribal representatives, could work on the exact language if that is of concern to the assembly. That seems like a detail that could be worked out in drafting. So, but just off the top of my head.
And I'm fine with that. Just wanted to bring it up.
I think it's a good point.
I'm fine with that also.
So Steve and Becky, you are fine with Celine's suggestion that we add language that they work with the governor?
The legislative body work with the governor's office.
Lisa, what do you think about that little change? I think it's a little change. It just brings in another entity to weigh in on the situation.
That's fine. I mean, however we can get this done.
And just to make sure I've said it, fully supportive of this needs to be done. I'm glad to see it on the list.
Perfect. Any other comments? Letitia, I know you're driving. Do you want to add anything?
No, just fully supportive of the recommendation.
Okay. So proposal B So the next proposals would be proposal B, proposal D. E, actually, it looks like E, it says deleting. So it looks like E was taken off of the list. And then there's a proposal F and G.
We might want to go through F and G because those are related to the CWCB. We could do those first.
Okay, would you like to present F?
Sure, and I think the F is the ability to waive match, and I can read that one in its entirety. It's F, ability to waive match for tribes. The Ute Mountain Ute and Southern Ute tribes have the opportunity to develop water infrastructure to put to beneficial use their federal reserved water rights. These opportunities are a result of substantial and recent progress in bringing the tribes into policy discussions to assert tribal rights in processes to address Colorado River Basin issues. These opportunities are also a result of tribal access to the substantial increase in the availability of state and federal funding to assert and develop tribal water rights and related infrastructure. The state can play a dual role by directly funding tribal water projects while providing matching leverage for securing federal funding for these purposes. A major obstacle to the tribes taking full advantage of these greatly expanded opportunities are matching requirements. In short, the tribes have abundance of much needed funding, opportunities with very limited financial capacity to meet matching requirements. Accordingly, the tribes request that the state of Colorado waive matching requirements for water plan grants and others with a similar purpose of expanding opportunities for efficient water resource uses, development, and conservation. So this one is legislation is required. And I think the reason that legislation would be required because under water plan grants, it would be a statutory change. I put that in my comments. But I think we could do a case-by-case basis on CWCB grants like WSRF grants on an individual basis, and I think that's something that's possible. But the water plan match is in statute and would require a legislative change.
And I just wanted to note that I put some language in for discussion, and it was really around the legislative change component of this. And I wanted to open up a discussion. I thought we could be a little clearer and more precise about potential actions of the General Assembly versus the Colorado Water Conservation Board. And so if you look into the document, I copied the relevant part of the statute that shows why there's a statutory requirement of match to be 25% with the exception of years that haven't passed. And so was just wondering if instead of that broad statement about the state of Colorado waiving match, that we could actually say, this is the legislative change that we are recommending, in which case we might need to talk about that here a little bit. So that was what I put in the draft just to help our discussion today.
No, I think that makes sense, Celine. We can discuss that. And something I think I said last week is I would hope CWCB would have the authority to waive match for any entity if they prove the need to. I know that's not the role of this task force, and I don't think it should probably move forward in this recommendation. That's just a comment I want to make. I think it should be available to any entity as the CWCB sees fit.
And I think we may want to choose to focus on that statutory change because I think that's where the legislation the CWCB can choose to waive match at any point and may want to at any point for anyone on an individual basis. But I think if we're looking the water plan grants piece is in statute. And so I think we can't do that but by wave of wand. And so I think that's something that would be important to address.
Okay. So Celine, did you have specific language or thoughts in mind on that piece that you just talked about?
Yeah, I think that I mean, I don't know that our recommendation has to have the draft legislation with it. But I think it might make sense to request that a sort of the legislative recommendation would be for the General Assembly to remove the 25% minimum match requirement, at least for tribes, if not wholly, and provide the CWCB with authority to waive match. And then the second recommendation might be for the CWCB to just look at its policies and rules about match waivers. That's not legislative action. That's just sort of how the agency would handle match requests from tribes or tribal enterprises. I did put a note in there if the legislation ends up going into being very surgical and only allowing that 25% to be waived for tribal entities, there's another edit that probably needs to be made to the statute because tribes and tribal enterprises are not defined in that statute. I believe they're included in the government provision. So that seems like it's legislative drafting work that could be down the road. I think we want to be precise enough to say we're recommending this action by the General Assembly, this action by the CWCB, and maybe get into the drafting details during the session.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. That sounds good to me.
I think that's a good point, Celine. I don't know if we'll get there today anyway. So, and it was highly likely that it would get significantly changed. So maybe it's offering the suggestions.
And just to make sure, I think we could frame the request as that we'd like for the General Assembly to allow the CWCB to set match at least for tribes, and that could leave the possibility of a full waiver for any entity, which I think we can make a recommendation that wouldn't preclude that from happening should that be the legislative path to just give that authority to waive match fully to the CWCB, to your point, Steve.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I am supportive of that as well, and I'm okay with that moving forward as suggested by Celine, with those additional suggestions from Celine. And sorry, can I ask Letitia
I'm
just,
probably about another 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I'm in Toyak, but I still need to set up my laptop if that's okay.
okay, I'd like to make a suggestion that we take a break so that we can continue discussions with Letitia online and able to participate in discussions.
Yep, perfect.
Okay, can we
Sounds
do
great.
make a 5-minute break?
Perfect.
Okay, we'll come back online in 5 minutes. All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are back from our 5-minute break. And it looks like we do have Letitia Yazzie, representative for Ute Mountain Ute Tribe, online with us. So we will return to our discussion on the potential proposals that will come from the subtask force today. And right now we are talking through the proposals, and once we finish that, we will take a vote on those proposals. I guess my question for everyone here, and actually, before I continue, Letitia, are you able to hear us, and are you online and able to join the discussion?
Yeah, I'm here now. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. So my question for the group is whether we should go back to proposal A to finish up that discussion before moving on to a new proposal.
That works for me.
Fine, I think we're pretty much, it's just a little bit of wordsmithing on A.
Yeah, we have the comments that we should combine the final paragraph that I had written with the final paragraph that Letitia added. But I did have a question for Letitia, and that was for more specificity on where the funding would, what source of funding should be pursued for this study, if not the projects bill. And then I guess also that I do have a secondary question. Reading through that second or that last paragraph that was added again, there was a number added of 200,000, and so I just wanted to I guess get a little bit more feedback on that number as well.
Do we know where that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Letitia.
So the 2,000 was you know, a number given by the tribe's consultant. And right now we really wanted a grant to fund the study, and we didn't go into detail about what kind of grant we would pursue, but so that's where I am with that. And we did talk about the projects bill, and you know, as you know, tribes, we don't really want that much information out there.
Maybe this is a question for Becky. I mean, I'm not sure the right way to seek funding for this thing. Whatever works best. Projects bill, I mean, the draft is out there. How late can you sort of add something into it? I don't know. I think DNR is in front of JVC today, I think.
They I think are done at this point, because they were first up, but I think that, you know, the legislators can add things to the projects bill on their own accord.
Okay.
And we may be able to do an additional ad based on where it's coming from.
Okay.
Or you could go through a grant process. I mean, I think we could leave the place of funding somewhat undetermined, but
it would definitely be a conversation that the tribes and CWCB would work on, you know, after this. So I don't, yeah,
one of the questions you had earlier was about who would apply, and I think that would be the tribes applying. So just wanted to also throw that out there. I would yeah, I like the ideal of keeping it open to either the project's bill or grants. Wherever the tribes decide to go with that.
So would the recommendation be to just include, rather than be very specific about the project's bill, to include the language that the tribes will seek funding from all sources, project's bill and other grants?
Yes.
And certainly that request is supported by the task force.
Okay, sorry, I'm writing this down so I can revise. Or I'm typing, not writing. Okay, so I'll revise that, the last paragraph, and combine info from the paragraph that I wrote and the paragraph that Letitia included, along with comments that were made today. Let's see. So I will turn it over to Letitia to discuss proposal B.
One thing before we leave that proposal, we may want to take out that last line of no legislation action requested, because there may be legislative action if we go through the projects bill. So I think we may want to just take that line out. Sorry, I'm popping back and forth between the document and our meeting,
So at the end of the recommendations, we put kind of like a little bold statement to whoever's reading that would kind of know what it is that we're requesting, if there was no legislation or legislation needed. So I think that was important.
Maybe, and I think this might apply to a couple of other things depending on where we end up. There's something that flags like no immediate legislative action, but potential or something like that, that signals like there could be legislative action, but there's something we need to do first.
Okay, that's a good suggestion, Celine. Okay, so moving on to proposal B. Letitia?
Okay, B is adjustments to allowable water uses on reservations. As it currently stands, both tribes have a specified purpose of use in the Colorado Ute Settlement and Consent Decree documents. For example, the Animas La Plata project water has a defined use of municipal and industrial. A recommendation for flexibility in the use for both tribes is recommended. A discussion and possibly an analysis to include the CWCB Attorney General's Office, state engineer, and both tribes on the implication geographical constraints of flexible travel use of tribal water anywhere in Colorado on the reservations is requested. It is understood that it will also involve the federal government, but to work towards that with the state is needed. And no legislation were required for that one.
So in the main drought task force discussions and actually during the final meeting and discussions yesterday, the group voted to, there was a discussion on having a section for narrative so that the General Assembly would know that some of these issues were discussed and that they were important, but there was no request for legislative action at this time. Do you think that this would be an issue that could go into the narrative since there is no legislative action being requested?
Yeah, it could definitely be a narrative, and I know for Ute Mountain, we've been, pushing this ideal for some time, and we brought it to the last minute, and we couldn't fully vet it, and so as a narrative, I would that would be okay with that.
Yeah, to me, that makes sense to do it that way. And possibly put a little more details in this request. Letitia, I don't know, are you talking about all of the tribal water rights or just specific ones? And why you, at least on the state side, you wouldn't go through the water court process to do a change of use on these, what the hindrance to that process would be. So maybe just a little more detail on this within the narrative itself.
Okay, and how are we gonna, do you guys wanna, when, or how should I do that by, or how are we gonna do that? My question.
Well, I guess what water rights you're talking about, I think might be simple to add. The why or why not you don't go through the water court process. Maybe that's just a question or a comment to put in here, not to define it exactly, but because I don't know what Kelsey's deadline for having final material is.
I'll let Kelsey answer that. I was going to say, I assume it's the same as the drought task force.
No, we're meeting a day later. We get another day.
There's an argument for that. The deadline for the task force is 1 p.m. on Monday for all final content. I can accept it up until 10 a.m. on Tuesday.
Ooh, I like that.
Oh, don't say that out loud, Kelsey.
Well, I didn't say it yesterday. That's my hard deadline.
I think the narrative piece is a good idea of saying these are important issues to continue working on.
Yeah, and there's the line that I flagged it first because it has recommended in it twice, which I find a little grammatically confusing, but I was wondering that instead of asking the task force to make a specific recommendation, that I thought we could be clear that we discussed in the task force that the place and type of use restrictions are related to the tribal ability to respond to drought. I thought it was important for us to make the point that this was brought here because some of these restrictions are being seen as sort of hindering drought response. So just wondering if that would make more sense, and if not, I just want to better understand the recommendation sensed before we move forward.
I I yeah, I need to work on rewording that recommendation, but I can definitely do that. And you know, I like the idea of adding drought response to that. And one question that I had for Lisa was does would Southern Ute be included in this narrative, or would it just be Ute Mountain Ute still?
Southern U would not be included in this. This is not a proposal that we were able to bring before our tribal council, so we don't have authorization on this specific proposal. And yeah,
Any other comments?
yeah, no, I think, and thank you, Letitia, for being willing to move that to the narrative. I think it is an important issue. I know Ute Mountain has been struggling with that, and just in terms of time, we were not able to get this to Southern Utes Tribal Council for discussion and authorization. So I think by putting it in the narrative, it'll allow for further discussion, and that way it'll be out there and Southern Ute is able to turn its attention to it now that it has been brought up. But it really just came down to a matter of time in when this proposal was brought forth. So I do appreciate you being able to move it to the narrative so that it can stay on everyone's radar, but also provide more time to address it.
Are we on D now?
Think so.
Yes, we finished B. We did speak about C. And I know you were still driving into the office on C. I think you said that you were okay with that recommendation, Letitia?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, on to D.
Okay, so D, you made it more broad, and so, the title is O&M requirement in the Colorado Ute settlement. So the Ute requested a resolution from the General Assembly to support federal legislation that relieves the tribes of the obligation to pay operation, maintenance, and repair in the Colorado Ute settlement when there's no revenue generated from the use of the water. Example of that is 2021 drought year when the Ute Tribe Farm and Ranch Enterprise only received a 10% water supply. And a resolution is requested on that issue.
Just a question so I understand it. this wording change needed in the 86 Settlement Act, the 88 federal legislation? I mean, I just want to understand where this specific language is.
I believe it is in the 88 settlement, right? Correct?
That's got, if you're not sure, I can find it. I was just curious, and that's fine. I guess my other question, the way it's written, you said, when no revenue is generated, but what happens if you get 10% revenue and you still have 100% costs and 50% revenue? Should it be prorated based on sort of the water supply you receive rather than off or on? Does that make sense?
And I have a question also, Letitia. Does it require federal legislation to do this, or is there an agreement that can occur between Mountain Ute and the federal government?
And at that point, you know, we're working on the repayment contract, or I think it's in the repayment, or is it in, or it's 4A of the settlement, but we're working on the repayment contract with those terms. And, you know, part of that, in the public discussion, was it last week? They were discussing secretarial deferral. They had one sentence in there that was different. And so you know, if, you know, the tribe isn't unable to pay or unable to make the payments, then it goes into default. And so I think that's kind of directly tied into this what is this recommendation here. And I'm not really, you know, I'm not really sure if federal legislation or is need or in agreement. Yes, maybe Celine has the answers to that.
I don't have the answers to it, but I was thinking about something that I just wanted to put forward. If we don't have the specifics today, we could try to run down specifics, or we could take an approach of asking the General Assembly to pass a resolution supporting something like federal action needed to adjust the repayment obligations to respond to drought. Like leave it a little bit broader to encompass that, to get to the details later. Or we could try to run details down between now and Monday, which might be tight.
And I know Peter's on the call. If we could elevate him to be able to speak on that.
What is the will of the group?
I'm fine with that, yes.
I would like to hear from him, because I think we're going to have to take a vote on these proposals today. And if we don't have something that's fleshed out or that we understand, I don't think we'd be able to vote on anything. So I definitely think we should do that.
All right, Peter. There you are. You should be promoted to panelist now.
Okay, well, thank you so much. So very briefly, there's a requirement in the act that says that once the tribes start to use a portion of their water, they're on the hook for O&M. Now, over at McPhee Reservoir, if we use just a little bit, we're on the hook for the O&M for the entire amount of water. But to your question, Steve, it's prorated over at ALP. So if we're only using 10% of the water, we're only responsible for 10% of the O&M. this particular provision is coming out of the fact that in the law, the secretary has discretion to waive the O&M charges if the tribes are not receiving enough gross revenue. And so that has been used recently against us over at the farm, where we only received 10% of our allocation, but we were still required to pay 100% of the O&M, even though we had requested to have some relief under that provision of the act. So this particular request would be to have the Colorado Assembly make a recommendation to the United States to somehow address this issue and ensure that the tribes are not paying for O&M when they simply cannot do so. It is an element of the repayment agreement, and it is an issue in the negotiations there, but this request is meant to be a little more narrow, I think, than just what's going on in the overall negotiations. Thank you for the opportunity.
Peter, hey, so is this request specific to McPhee or both McPhee and ALP? Sounds like it doesn't apply at ALP.
No, this would apply at ALP as well, because the way it's written right now, Steve, the secretary could continue to make us pay. I mean, we pay a proportional share once we have that lease. Let's say it's a 10% lease, but once that lease is over, the secretary still reserves the right to continue to make us pay that 10% O&M for time eternal. So what this is doing is this is saying, please don't put us under that regime, because it makes our water extremely expensive in order for us to have that obligation.
Okay, thank you.
Could I ask Peter a question?
Yes.
So Peter, we were talking about the language about, like, this is very specific to relieving tribes of the payment when no revenue is generated. So what happens if there's some revenue generated, but there's no net revenue? Like, is the point to make that gross to net, or I just want to make sure I understand what we're being asked here.
It seems to the tribe is not asking to be relieved of its obligation to pay a portion of the O&M as we're currently required. The request by the tribes is so that when we're no longer receiving that revenue, we're no longer required to pay that. So I guess maybe in answer to your question, it could be a proportional reduction. You know, I mean, I think that maybe is what you're getting at earlier, Steve. If we were getting a lease that, you know, is paying for 10% of the water, and then later on the lease got reduced or something like that, then yeah, the tribe would be asking for a proportional reduction of its O&M obligation.
So if we said something like supporting federal action needed to adjust repayment obligations to respond to drought, does that cover everything you're looking for? Or does it need to be more specific than that?
No, yeah, I mean, I would say that I mean, we could that's why we're referring to the OM&R in the language, because that's exactly that's more specific.
Okay. But what about the last part? So the no revenue generated versus like something broader, like to adjust to drought. Do you want it to be specific?
Something about prorated based on water delivered, or
yeah, maybe more like prorated, yeah, instead of no revenue. I don't think I'm answering your question, Celine, but that part about the drought is just explaining what happened at the farm in that 1 year. This is not specifically a request that's limited to the drought.
Okay.
I hope that's correct, Letitia. I know you've been in more of these conversations than I've been.
Yeah, I just have to add a comment here. Specifically was brought at a later date, and I was not able to put it on the list that we brought before before Southern Utes Tribal Council. And again, we do not have authorization for Southern Ute to move forward on this specific proposal. For looking at it and hearing the discussion on the request, it's, I mean, I understand the reason for it, and I understand the request. It just wasn't on the list of proposals that I was able to bring to Southern Utes Tribal Council before this meeting. And I think I actually brought a list to our tribal council 2 weeks ago, and this was not one of them. So we aren't able to include Southern Ute in the request, because the proposal says it does say Ute Mountain is making the request for resolution, but then in the second line it says tribes. And so I just need to make that clear that this is not something that I was authorized to move forward on.
Lisa, is there any value just in the document to put a phrase that this recommendation may be considered by the Southern Ute Tribal Council at a later date, just to flag that if the Southern Ute may consider it? I just want to leave it blank.
I mean, they may consider anything in the future. I don't even have a request in to them to consider it, because they had already voted on proposals that were that we had discussed a couple weeks ago, and that's when I was able to get a work session with them. So I didn't realize there were going to be and I should have maybe realized that there was going to be added proposals to the list.
Yep.
Just
a thought. It's up to you
yeah.
where it goes.
So this one is gonna be also going in the narrative section. Is that the suggestion?
Well, Letitia, I think that's kind of up to you how you want this to move forward. There is a specific request here, but if you need more time to sort of work on specific language that looks like, maybe it does move forward as a narrative.
Would we be able to just just do U Mountain, and then that language that Celine talked about in replacing that no revenue generated sentence? Would it be able to move forward?
I just wanted to note that I thought I heard from Peter that I didn't get that description quite right. So just want to ask, if the preference is to leave it as no revenue generated, I'm not opposed to that. If it's limited to Ute Mountain Ute, and we can work out those details.
But I thought Peter said something about prorated makes more sense. I'm just not exactly sure how to fit it into the sentence.
Yeah, so instead of saying no revenue, I guess you could just say that, based upon the revenue that is received or something like that.
So it doesn't relieve the tribe, but it changes the Ute Mountain Ute tribe's obligation based on, or is prorated to water deliveries or something.
Yeah, to sort of relieve the tribes of the obligation. You could say to prorate the obligation based on the amount of revenue received or something like that. So sorry to be wordsmithing here with you guys, but I think that's what you're asking.
So as I'm reading the paragraph, I just want to make sure I understand the request is to the Colorado General Assembly that they write a resolution requesting that the US make these changes in the settlement.
Yeah, in the legislation that supports the settlement.
I mean, I think we're not asking, I'm looking up the definition of resolutions and so forth. And I don't know if we're asking for this to be pushed onto the executive branch to be signed into law within the state of Colorado. So I think it would actually be a non-binding resolution. But I think that's something to be aware of.
Well, Letitia, I guess, can you work with Peter to get some language in here in the very near future that sort of goes along that lines of prorated?
Yes, we can work on this again, the language.
Nod your head, Peter. Thank you.
Perhaps we could leave break time between now and when we vote on this particular item to give them a little bit of time over the break.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that would be helpful because I would need to see specific language before voting on it.
Well, and I don't know if we're going to be able to have the same caveats as the drought task force did yesterday with comment and so forth, but that might be helpful.
I don't know. There's a couple word edits we need to do in this document we've talked about. Is there any way to sort of do a final email vote Monday morning or Monday noon to allow people to get some edits in there? Or does that make any sense?
I'm fine with that. I'll make time. We can even convene a short meeting if we have met the proper notice requirements, but I don't know if that's possible at this point.
So I'm not available on Monday, and then I'm in Las Vegas Tuesday through Friday. I mean, I could probably take time out. I guess the problem that we would run into is the final report, right?
Yeah.
At this point, I'm not going to be able if I could update the website on my own, I absolutely would. But at this point, my web team has let me know that they will probably not be able to get notice out for if you were to do a meeting on Monday.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out how to give people time to put in some edits that we know we need.
Could we, once we get through these proposals and discuss them? I mean, we're at 1:22. We are scheduled till 3. Could we then break so that everyone can work on those on that on the language edit, on the edits for the proposal language, and then give ourselves, since we are already discussing, we shouldn't have too much. We should be able to just vote once we have these edits in place. Can we come back at 2:30 and vote, or we could finish the meeting and come back at 4 or 5 and do a quick vote?
I think what you're saying makes most sense. I think we'll be done by 2, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Allow some public comment again, and then come back at 2:30 or 2:45 for a final checkoff.
Does that work for everyone else? I can make that work.
I don't think we went over the last
No,
recommendation.
we still have one more to go.
Oh.
You're right.
Yeah. I just wanted to hear the comments that you guys added.
No, we will, Letitia. I just want to ask everyone if we're okay with breaking when we're done going through the proposal, so we can work on the language and then come back to the meeting to do our vote and review of the final language.
I'm good with that.
Yep.
Becky, would you be able to do that? Yeah, okay. All right, then I suggest we move on to the next proposal for discussion. Which is G.
And G is cultural protection as a beneficial use statewide. And that would be to work with the in-stream team or flow team to add cultural protection as a concern, and with CWCB to include cultural protection as a beneficial use. A legislative change is needed. And that one is mainly, we need to work on this whole concept, and with both the in-stream flow team and CWC, and it's in the beginning stages, but we would like it in the report. Possible legislation for later, I guess, what I should say.
So I guess my thoughts about this, I have concerns because it's so far reaching within the state of Colorado. I would suggest maybe it's a narrative to move forward. And then within that narrative, I would suggest there's got to be some broad stakeholder coordination effort. I mean, Peter, I think last time we talked about it, you meant this to apply statewide to all in-stream flows. And if that's the case, I just think there needs to be a pretty big stakeholder effort to discuss it. Rather than just, move it forward within CWCB itself. So that's, I guess, my request.
I would agree. I think I think both Celine and Steve alluded to this, that when we deal with in-stream flow, there's statewide implications, which requires a public stakeholder process, maybe even rulemaking, and then a legislative change of beneficial use. So I would say that I would never suggest any legislative change without a public stakeholder process.
Yeah, and I guess my stakeholder processes come in all different forms, and I would hate one meeting in Denver covered it. The meetings Kevin Ryan has done relative to measurement rules, I think, have been great down in, at least around here. So that's all. I think it needs to be a broad discussion.
And I had a couple of things. One is just thinking about the current process by which in-stream flows are decreed, or even in a lot of the processes that aren't decreeing new in-stream flows. Colorado Parks and Wildlife has a pretty big role in identifying things like flow needs. So if we're talking about which species are being looked at in in-stream flows. It seems like you'd potentially want some of the in-stream flow staff from Parks and Wildlife in the conversation, since they may be the ones that are actually looking at sort of the needs of particular species. And then, yeah, my other comment was I actually felt like we needed a little bit more on process, and we had a there's a sentence in proposal B that I thought maybe could be adapted here as we're developing narrative, just that we identified this as an important issue out of the sub task force. The next step would be for these entities to meet, and that eventually there might be proposed legislation after stakeholder rulemaking or whatever goes on.
If I may add, I did speak with someone at the in-stream flow team, as we're referring to it in that request, and there are actually various ways that this could be pursued. And legislation is not necessarily required. So I think maybe it would be a good idea to sort of peruse the parameters of that, understanding what that is, and then seeing if there is a way to implement something like this. So maybe the request isn't for a specific resolution or legislation, but really just to analyze the situation to see if there's a way we can move forward with it.
So I guess I interpret that as moving it forward as a narrative for discussion relative to any legislative action. Is that correct? And is that acceptable to folks?
We could reword it.
That's acceptable to me.
Yep, I am fine with moving that to a narrative, and with Ute Mountain Ute tribe adding additional language to make that clear. Is Ute Mountain Ute tribe okay with moving this to the narrative rather than a recommendation?
That is okay.
Okay, and then and actually, we had said this earlier, but I just want to make sure we have a proposal labeled E, dedicated assistance, and it does say deleting, so I just want to make sure that is being deleted, taken, removed as a proposal.
Yes, that has been removed.
Okay. All right, so we have gone through all of the proposals and discussed each of them in depth, and we have suggested comments and edits from everyone for each of those proposals. We've agreed to sign off and allow our teams to make those edits to the language in this working document, and then come back to the meeting for a final vote after we see those edits. Is that what everyone's understanding is? Oh, so
I just want to make sure that I know who is editing which proposal, particularly if I'm supposed to edit anything.
I had planned on editing the two proposals from Southern Ute. Which are
Okay.
That's
A
and C.
and- yeah, A and C.
Okay.
And I'll be working with Peter to revise the other ones.
Would anyone be able to do the waiver for the match requirements to kind of take one off of Ute Mountain Ute's plate? Because that seems to be one that's a little bit more not so much focused on the need for Ute Mountain Ute's input. Or actually our input either.
Celine
I
volunteered.
can.
Okay.
I can at least get something for you guys to poke at.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't think we had too many edits for that one.
All right, just as a point of technical process, I will keep this YouTube and live stream going and stay here in the meeting. And y'all can just come back in with your panelist links.
Are we gonna do public comment?
Oh, yes. Why don't we do a public comment and then we will move to work on our edits, and then we also need to decide what time we need to get back on.
Yep.
But let's go ahead and ask our audience if anyone has any public comments to make.
All right, members, attendees in the public, if you would like to make a public comment and you have up to 3 minutes to talk, please put your first and last name in the Q&A. All right. All right, we have one request from Ed Millard. And Ed, I will be giving you permission to talk, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Ed.
I just wanted to express some concern. Certainly, you're still fleshing it out, but if this cultural in-stream flow program is going to extend to the entire state, I think that would cause a lot of concern to a lot of people. I can certainly see maybe pursuing it for the rivers which cross the reservations, but if you're going to start asserting cultural in-stream flows on the other side of the state, or are the Arapaho and the Cheyenne going to be able to assert these from Wyoming, or are the Utes going to be asserting cultural flows for the Upper Dolores under the Bonneau hunting and fishing agreements? And I don't know. I don't really see how you can extend this to the entire state. So I'd certainly like to have sideboards that put some boundaries on where this would be asserted. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Ed. Is there anyone else from the attendees who would like to make a public comment? All right. Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, thank you for your comments. At this time, we are going to sign off so that we can work on these clarifying edits and suggestions that were made so that we can finalize these proposals and take a final vote on them when we return. In addition, we also have some meeting minutes from the last meeting that we need to approve. And Kelsey has emailed those minutes to the subtask force. So if everyone could please just do a quick review so we can get those approved before the end of the meeting. And right now it's 1:35. What time should we return for a vote? Would 2:40?
Editors.
Would 2:40 work? That would give us 20 minutes before the end of to 3 p.m. Okay. So I will see everyone back online at 2:40 p.m. so we can approve the minutes and take a final vote on these proposals.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, Swain.
Hello. Should one of us reach out to Kelsey to see if we can resume before 2:40?
Yeah,
Oh,
Oh,
is
we
that
can?
okay? Okay.
As long as Lisa comes back, yeah.
And Becky.
And
Yeah.
Becky.
And Becky.
Hey, Kelsey.
Yeah.
How often does the Google Doc refresh? I just want to make sure.
For the public, every 5 minutes.
But for us, it's automatic.
Mhm.
Okay, I just want to make sure I got all the edits.
I can text Becky. And Lisa. Do either of you have Lisa's number? I don't seem to have it.
I sent her a text.
All right,
Okay.
thanks, Letitia. And Becky says she'll get on.
Good afternoon, I'm rejoining, and it looks like we have everyone here. So although we said we were rejoining at 2:40, we can go ahead and start now at 2:34 p.m. And hopefully our attendees are all online and know that we are starting earlier than expected. We took, and just to bring everyone online back up to speed, we took a break to allow for the tribes and actually for the subtask force members to make edits and clarifications to the proposals so that we can make a final vote on those proposals. So it's my understanding that we all did that and we can begin. Actually, we'll take a final vote on those proposals now that we've made those edits to them. But before we get to that final vote, I would like to finish up with the rest of our business, which was to approve those the agenda. No, sorry. I'm all over the place. To approve those minutes from the last meeting. Did everyone get a chance to review those?
Mm.
Perfect. Can we get a motion to approve those meeting minutes from the last meeting?
I would move, so with the note that there's one small spelling error that I can help Kelsey correct. Wave is spelled wrong. It's like wave instead of wave, matching fees.
Okay, I will go catch that.
Perfect. Thank you, Celine. Anyone like to second the motion? Perfect. Becky seconded, and let's do a final vote. Does everyone approve the minutes from the last meeting? Perfect. Everyone's hands went up, and so we all approve those final meeting minutes with the correction of the spelling of wave, W-A-I-V-E. Thank you, everyone. And so now let's move on to our final vote on these proposals.
Lisa, can I ask a question? There are some redlinings and some just questions I have about looking at some of the edits. Would it be possible for us to share a screen and work through those before we take a final vote?
Yeah, do you want to do that?
I can. I have it up. Give me a second. All right. And Lisa, do you want to walk us through this, or do you want me to?
I can walk us through. Thank you for bringing it up on the screen. So during our discussion earlier this afternoon, we talked about revising the final paragraph. Letitia had made a suggestion for the final paragraph. And so I actually just made edits to crossed out the paragraph that I had drafted and moved new language to the paragraph that Letitia had drafted. And so I will go through and read that. First, I deleted tribal because although we are working on tribal matters, it is not called the Tribal Subtask Force in the legislation. And so I just wanted to be consistent with the legislation. And so the subtask force recommends and requests that a grant be provided to engage in an expert analysis of the quantity of water potentially available, the impacts of contributing that water to the Colorado River system, the appropriate level of compensation, funding sources for a pilot program, potential benefits for all involved, and all additional technical and fiscal details of such a program. It is anticipated that such an analysis could be done for not more than originally it said 200,000, but I made a revision to say 250,000, given existing data which can be made available to the analysts. And so those are the edits that I made. If anyone would like to, I'll open the floor to for any additional comments. And I want to give you guys time to read it on your own too. I know it's a little more difficult to listen to someone reading it and other than seeing it with your own eyes.
I just have a question for Steve and Becky. There were some comments about the benefits for Southwestern Colorado and legal aspects of this work? Is that adequately addressed by these edits?
Yeah, I mean, the benefits to all is in here. I like the benefits to Colorado and Southwest Colorado a little better, but nothing that's critical.
And actually, I did forget to put legal. Maybe we can add that to, and all additional technical, legal, and fiscal details.
Okay.
Yeah, and I understand what you were saying, Steve. I was just trying to keep it
And
a little bit more brief.
no, and that's fine.
Thanks for this, Lisa.
So do we want to go through all the edits first, or should we vote on each proposal as we are moving through them?
I would vote on each one.
Okay. Celine, do you want to accept those edits for proposal A?
I can, but I might need Kelsey's help.
Google Docs is not as easy.
Okay, well, we did see what the language edits were, and so let's go ahead and put it up for a vote. Let's vote on, actually, I think we need a motion first. We want to have a motion to move this forward as a recommendation.
I would move this forward as a recommendation.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and vote on this proposal. I will just do a roll call. Letitia, do you approve this recommendation to move forward?
Yes.
And Steve?
Yes.
Celine?
Yes.
Becky?
Yes.
Lisa? Yes, I do. Okay, moving on to, and then, I'm sorry, and Kelsey, we did have 5 votes to approve this proposal A to move forward as a recommendation.
Yes, I have captured that in the notes.
Okay, great. Proposal B, I will turn this over to Letitia.
So B is adjustments to allowable tribal water uses on reservations. And do you want me to read the whole thing again, or is it?
We have it up on the screen. I think you can maybe just walk us through the edits.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the whole paragraph was reworded, and I see there's some edits made by Lisa in there. And yeah, so Mountain Ute tribe is requesting that the state engage with the tribes in order to determine whether and how the state can support the tribe's effort to allow the tribe to utilize their federal reserved water right anywhere within Colorado portion of their reservation and for any purpose they see fit.
Could I offer a drafting suggestion? And that's that we just use the whole title Ute Mountain Ute tribe in each place so there's no confusion.
Yes, I agree with that. And I realized as I was putting in, so one, to recapture what we discussed this morning, this proposal B was going to be moved to a rather than a recommendation. And then 2, because Southern Ute was not, because we were not able to bring it before Southern Utes Tribal Council. I'm not able to authorize putting Southern Ute onto this request. So that's why it was trying to keep it to tribe instead of tribes. But I agree, Celine, that it would be more clear if it just said Ute Mountain Ute.
And just checking the one that I'm on now about the requesting that the state engage with the tribe, that also should just be Ute on Ute.
At this point, yes, and it's. I think that if Southern Ute would like to get involved in the future, then we can. But in terms of this specific request, I just can't authorize making the request right now.
Okay. I think you can all see I've just made changes so that each tribal reference is to the Ute Mountain Ute tribe there.
And I accepted all of Lisa's changes in there.
Yep.
Do we need to mark here that it's for narrative?
Yes, I think so.
And will that go in a separate section, like above a preamble, right? Or something in the beginning of the document?
That's my understanding, but I'll defer to Kelsey.
Yes, and I can actually show you the working draft of the final report at this point. I'm happy to share that on here. It's also up on the website for any members of the public on the resources page. If you scroll down to the working documents, there's now another working document. That's the draft of the final report. So as of right now, and you all can tell me if you would like the tribe sub task force section to look different, but as of right now, the way that I have it laid out for the sub task force is that there is an introduction to the whole section of the report. Then, as you all suggested, at one of the meetings in October, I don't remember which one, a background on tribal water rights, then the recommendations considered but not approved, and then narratives. And so the narrative section will have an introduction that basically states this item was not voted on. This is not necessarily an endorsement, but this is a topic that the group considers important and in need of further conversation. And that needed to be captured in the report.
Okay.
And you all can provide, I will put that language in hopefully today, probably tomorrow. And so you have until 1 p.m. on Monday to tell me what you want to see changed in that language.
So did I hear correctly that we don't vote on the narrative additions?
No, narratives do not require a vote.
Okay, so we've got proposal C, which is to seek a resolution from the Colorado General Assembly to address funding for the PRIP, the Pine River Indian Irrigation Project. I did read all of the background information and the reasoning for this request, and I made edits to the request, which is the final paragraph based on our discussion. And for the request, it says the subtask force requests that the Colorado General Assembly work with Governor Jared Polis to send a letter to the U.S. Congress to request that it fully appropriate the full $35 million that is authorized for the Indian Irrigation Fund.
Works for me.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to move this forward as a recommendation? Okay, thank you. A second?
Second.
Okay, let's take a vote on that. I'll go down the list. Letitia,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Celine,
Yes.
Becky.
Yes.
Thank you. And this is Lisa. I also vote yes to move this forward as a recommendation. So next we have proposal D, which is the OMNR requirement in the Colorado Ute settlement. I'll turn this over to Letitia to explain any edits.
So this one was reworded again, totally reworded from the previous one, and It reads, the federal legislation implementing the Colorado Ute Indian Water Settlement imposes the responsibility on the tribes to pay a proportional share of the fixed operation, maintenance, and repair costs at Lake Nighthorse forever based upon the proportional share of their water right that is being depleted. This renders the tribe's water prohibitively expensive. However, the law allows the Secretary of Interior to waive this requirement at her discretion, and the Ute Mountain Ute tribe saw an example of this exercise of discretion at McPhee Reservoir when in 2021, despite receiving only 10% of its water and submitting a request to the secretary to exercise her discretion and reduce the tribe's OM&R obligation for that water year, the secretary refused to grant the request, resulting in severe hardship to the tribe. The Ute Mountain Ute therefore requests a resolution from the General Assembly to support federal legislation that relieves or proportionally reduces, as the case may be, the tribes or the Ute Mountain Ute tribe of the obligation to pay their share of the fixed O&M repair in the Colorado Ute settlement when the revenue received from utilizing their water is no longer generated or is reduced.
So Letitia, I've got one question just on some language. In the very first sentence, it states fixed O&M and repair, keep going, sorry. Based upon the proportional share of their water right that is being depleted. Now, my understanding is that if you depleted 20% 1 year, you will continue to owe that 20% whether you use it or not. Is that correct? Or am I wrong about that?
Yes.
So it is not that is being depleted. It is if you deplete it once, even if you don't deplete it. So I just think there's a little tweak on that language that's needed. Does that make sense? Instead of that is being depleted or that was depleted one time.
Celine, can you bring this paragraph fully onto the page so that it's not on the bottom? Thank you.
And I highlighted the language that I think Steve is discussing.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that it is correct or not, so. And I'm waiting for the attorneys on the call to make the proper language adjustment if necessary.
Peter's gonna make a comment.
That's a good catch, Steve. And I think maybe we can just say was depleted, or we can say is being depleted, even if the depletion is only for a short period of time or something like that. But was depleted is probably adequate, I would think.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's correct or captures what we intend.
Is everyone okay if I use the same approach of just marking Ute Mountain Ute tribe every time for clarity?
Yes, I think that would be helpful. And I guess this paragraph starts out talking about Lake Nighthorse, but then jumps over to McPhee Reservoir. Should it start out by talking about both projects for Ute Mountain Ute tribe?
But I thought Peter said the contract on ALP already is proportional. No, or maybe reverse.
Yeah, Lisa, that's a good observation. The reason I didn't get into that is because it's different at McPhee. At McPhee, if we used one drop, we were on the obligation to pay 100%. So it's a different situation at McPhee, but you make a good point. I mean, we can probably include in there that McPhee was included in the settlement without necessarily confusing it. So we could probably just say Lake Nighthorse and McPhee Reservoir forever. I don't think that would confuse it or be inaccurate.
I don't know how to put that edit in. I'm just looking at the sort of proportional share language, so I'll need help here.
In the reference to McPhee, we can say that it's under the same act or the same law. You raise a good point about bringing up McPhee all of a sudden without explaining why. So, I can either work on this some more and suggest something, or we can just maybe note that in the section about McPhee that McPhee's also under the same or similar restriction. So it could say something like, despite receiving only 10% of its water and submitting a request for a secretary to exercise her discretion, no, I have to think about it some more. Sorry.
And can you all remind me, is this one that we identified for narrative or a vote?
I thought this one was in the narrative, partly because folks hadn't had time to get checks on it. But I could be wrong.
I thought Letitia offered to put it in the narrative, but I didn't think a decision had been made.
From the notes that I took, I do not have a decision on this one. So I have a decision for the other ones, but not this one.
Could we take a vote and then from there decide if it doesn't, then decide next?
Well, I think it might matter. I don't think that a narrative action is requesting the resolution. So I'm just trying to figure out if we're trying to elevate this problem to the General Assembly's attention, we can do that through narrative. But if we're going to request a resolution, that seems like a vote. So I was just trying to figure out where we're headed here.
I think one of the questions was we weren't sure whether it required federal legislation to do this. And I think that was one of the reasons why we didn't have a decision on whether it was narrative or request for action or legislative action.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that I think it does require federal action and amendment to the settlement, which is what Southern Ute does not have authorization for that action to make a recommendation on that. And so it's not something that, which is why we can't be part of this request right now and why we cannot move it. We wouldn't be able to move it forward.
We can take out the language about a resolution and just say that the tribe would like to work with the state to figure out a way to resolve this or figure out a solution to this problem.
So as a narrative, I think that works.
So we could just support for federal legislation or something like that.
I just put a note in there. I am guessing that Letitia or Peter would want to have time to redraft that for the narrative, and that we could look at that by email if it doesn't require a vote.
Yeah, we can submit it by the Monday deadline.
Okay, is that enough for everyone?
Yes, thank you. Celine.
Seeing me edit poorly in Google Documents.
We all suffer the same.
I'll take that out.
Great, thank you, Celine. So now we have proposal E, ability to waive match. And I believe Celine made the edits for this, so I will ask her to explain those edits.
Yes, and I did not do it in red line, but I can flag where they are. I did a slight tweak in the language here to note that the tribes have requested this, but then I added a couple of specific subtask force recommendations that I can read. So the first one is the subtask force recommends that the General Assembly remove the statutory requirement in the Colorado Revised Statutes, section 37-60-106.3, subsection 6C, for matching funds of at least 25% for water plan implementation grants, and provide the Colorado Water Conservation Board discretion to waive or reduce matching fund requirements for grants to tribal nations and tribal enterprises. The second recommendation is the subtask force also recommends that the Colorado Water Conservation Board review policies and procedures on waiving Colorado Water Conservation Board grant match requirements with the Southern Ute and Ute Mountain Ute tribes to facilitate the Colorado Water Conservation Board's consideration of specific tribal requests to waive matching requirements. So the intent would be the first recommendation is focused on the potential legislative action. The second one would be the recommendation about agency action on waivers.
Can we, and I'm sorry, Celine, on the first recommendation, the subtask force recommends the General Assembly. Can we make sure that it's clear that we're waiving the matching funds requirement specifically for the tribes and not an overarching waive?
We have for grants to tribal nations and
Okay,
tribal enterprises. Do you want me to add that in earlier too?
and provide. It's probably okay.
We could put it here as well.
I don't know. What does the rest of the group think?
I think it captures it pretty well, personally.
Okay, then I'll be okay with it.
And I just realized that I should have put waiving or reducing here to match what I did above. And then I put in a different comment, and then this was context in my comments from earlier, which I can delete if everyone is okay with that.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, does anyone have any additional comments for these final edits here?
I would move we move this one forward.
I
Second.
Thank you, Steve, for the motion and Letitia for the second. We will take a vote. Becky, what is your vote on moving this recommendation forward?
Yes.
Celine,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Letitia,
Yes.
and Lisa. Yes, I also vote to move it forward. Thank you, everyone. And we have proposal F, the cultural protection of in-stream flow. And again, I will turn this over to Letitia.
And just real quick, Letitia, I will, the blue sentence at the bottom is something I added as a potential request, just so you know, it came from me.
So this one was reworded as well. The tribe members have harvested various plants and animals along rivers and streams for generations and depend on these cultural resources for ceremonies and wellness. The Ute Mountain Ute tribe requests the opportunity to work with the relevant state agencies and stakeholders in order to determine whether there is a suitable mechanism to include these cultural values for protection in stream flows and whether there are locations within the state where such protections may be implemented. And Steve added the parties agree to engage in a broad stakeholder process prior to moving forward with any legislative change. And I think in the second sentence we added stakeholders, so I don't know.
Yeah, I just wanted to be a little more clear and specific that, yes, I agree, there's a discussion within the agencies and the tribes first. But before anything moves forward, there should be a sort of a broad consensus process.
When I think some of that comes from that, how implications to the in-stream flow program implicate the whole state. And so making sure that there is no unintended consequences, and that if we're making a change to that program, we have to have a broad stakeholder process, or not, we're not making changes, but if we're advising that there should be a look at changes to be made, that a broad stakeholder process.
And I have a question, Letitia. Was this reference here to the tribe's members intended to be to the Ute Mountain Ute tribe? Can I make that change?
Yes.
Okay. And would this change, since we don't know whether legislation is required?
Is legislation may be required? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Would this be one of the recommendations where we say no legislation required today, but potentially in the future?
Which is fine. Does that turn it into more of a narrative? I mean, I guess I don't care either way.
Well, I think on the first one, we did no legislative action today, but possibly in the future. So I think it shouldn't be a narrative.
Okay.
I'll look at how Lisa did it up here. Sorry for the scrolling. I will use that same language. Pardon the scrolling again. And then I can take away earlier comments.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got a final paragraph here. Does Ute Mountain Ute agree to the last sentence suggested by Steve?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, do we have a motion to move this forward as a recommendation?
So
So-
moved.
Did you have a question or were you making the motion,
I
Celine?
was making the motion.
Okay, and a second?
I'll second.
Okay, let's go ahead and move to a vote. Becky,
Yes.
Celine,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Letitia,
Yes.
and Lisa, yes. So we have 5 votes to move that forward. And that ends the voting on on the proposals that are there. And we did move a couple of those to narratives. And we have those marked as well. So we are finished with our voting. We've come to that conclusion, and I think we've got to now focus on the final report. Kelsey, can you walk us through that and let us know what exactly we need to do? And I know you sent us the deadlines, and I have that in an email, and I forwarded that to the rest of the subtask force members. But I just, while we're here today in person, I'd like to just make sure we all know what we need to do.
Absolutely. The deadlines are any substantive, you all have already done your substantive changes, so I don't need to say that, but in the final draft final report, you need to enter your language or provide any comments that are going to be included in the report by Monday at 1 p.m. So what I will do now is I will take the content that you all have from your working document and I will move it over to the final report document. And so you all have until 1 p.m. on Monday to make any final edits or changes or provide comments on that. You all did talk about creating a background on tribal water rights. So that is something that would need to be created by you all or written up. Again, I would need that probably by end of day Monday to be in there. And then the next step on the timeline is Tuesday, the 12th. I think Tuesday's the 12th. I will be sending the full report to a technical editor and our graphic designer. And so we will be working through to get the final draft into a beautiful format, make sure all the language is right, everything's formatted in the same way. And then I will be sending it back out to both the task force and the subtask force on Thursday, and I don't remember exactly what time I said, I think 1 p.m. on Thursday at 1 p.m. And then I would need any small suggestions, typos, anything like that by 10 a.m. on Friday the 15th. And at that point, we will finalize the report. So anything substantive must be done by the end of, by 1 p.m. end of day Monday. After that, no substantive changes. Small edits, typos can go Thursday to Friday.
Okay.
Any questions for me while you have me here?
Kelsey, is this going into the broader working or the broader final report from the main task force? Is like what we did today, kind of deciding where's narrative, where is that going into that final report? I'm looking at them on the website right now is what I'm doing.
So on one of the questions that we as the facilitators have for you all is it does seem like you can have a separate report if you would like to, and submit it separately from the larger task force report. Right now, I have the task force has a section that has their introduction, their recommendations not approved, and narratives with comments. And then I have a separate section for the sub-task force to have an introduction, background, recommendations, and narratives.
And I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, I did send out an email to our sub-task force members asking, and I think the few responses I received back were that we wanted to include it in the main task force, but separate with our information separately, not incorporated into the main task force information.
Yep.
Absolutely. Gotcha. Okay. There will be a summary of work at the beginning that I am writing, not at this moment, but writing concurrent to this meeting. And it goes over just the basic outline of your meetings, how many times you met, what were some of the themes covered, and the process that you all used. So that language will be included, and I will hopefully finish writing that tomorrow so that you all will have a chance to review that and make any suggested edits or changes to that. Since that's not part of your substantive, I can take edits on that until end of day Monday.
Okay. So we need a background section. I will volunteer to write that first draft, and then I'll send it out to the sub-task force for review. And I'm sorry, when do we need the background information in? Is that Monday as well?
Yeah, and that can be end of day Monday.
Okay, so I will send that out to everyone. I don't know when. I mean, there shouldn't be that many edits. It'll just be background on tribes and our settlement and what federal water rights are and all of that.
Can I suggest that you do that in the shared Google Doc that's already on the website? If you feel comfortable.
Sure. I honestly, I
will need
in that document, so I'll probably write it and then just transfer it.
Okay, yes, that's fine.
And Lisa, the stuff that you and Letitia did the first couple meetings and at Water Resource Committee, I think that was all right on target.
Yeah, that's what I was planning on putting into Word form.
So other than the background, Kelsey, I believe you'll be working off of the Google Doc are you going to write the narrative and have us look at it, or are we responsible for writing the narrative up? I think the recommendations are a little clearer.
Right now, I will not be adding any content or making any edits. What I will do right now is I will copy and paste the items that you have said are narrative to the section on narrative. So if you want to edit those or change them, you can do that in there, but I will not be doing any content or substantive changes.
Okay, just confirming that Letitia, you and Peter will, there's that one that still needs drafting work that you two will be responsible for.
Yes.
And I know that a lot of you are traveling and out next week, so if I can be any kind of drafting assistance, you saw the limits of my skills with Google Docs today, but I will be here to help.
That's a big offer, Celine.
And then one thing you didn't cover, Kelsey, that I think we discussed in the main Drought Task Force meeting was attachments to the report. And I thought that we had discussed attaching all of those resources that we have on the website, or do we need to designate which resources we wanted to add as attachments?
I won't be attaching them to the report, but I will be noting what they are. And then all of them have been housed on the website so that they can be found on the website. So a list of the resources that you want noted would be helpful, because then I will put that in the resources section and state resources from sub-task force. Here's a list of them. You can find them here on the website.
Yeah, okay. So I think really we would suggest making sure to list the tribal water study portions that we submitted, and as well as the PowerPoint that was given to both the sub-task force and the main Drought Task Force on background and history of tribal water rights, although that'll be in our background as written. I think sometimes the PowerPoints may be easier for people to take bite-sized information and process that. So I think that would be nice to have listed on there.
Do you think the settlement document should be included as resources?
Did we submit those? If not,
thought-
we can send that to you.
I thought they were on the website, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
I can't remember what's on there anymore.
it's your choice.
A long list.
Long list.
Yeah. I think that would be helpful to have it right at their fingertips,
Yep.
to have that information. So I will check the website, and if it's not there, I'll send it to you, Kelsey.
Thank you.
So I don't think I have any more information or any more questions about the final report. Does anyone else have more questions?
Nope.
Okay, so I think we have our final vote. I will be working on the background. I'll send it out to everyone for review, or I'll let you know that when it's up on the Google Docs. Actually, that probably works better. I'm out of town for a little bit, so it'll come in, I think, randomly after I work on it at night or something. Okay, other than that, I think we're good to go. And we'll be able to get this report in by next Friday.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you to
Thank you all.
Becky, Celine, Steve, and of course you, Lisa, on
I think we're just getting ready
the task force.
to shift into the meeting. They're just wrapping up the other task force meeting.
Yep.
Welcome, and it's been a pleasure to work with everyone on the subtask force. And Kelsey, thank you and your teams for helping us with all of the note taking and facilitating.
Absolutely. It's been my
Yes,
pleasure.
Kelsey, thank you.
And I'm sorry, did we want to do one more public comment, or do we think we had that covered with the one that we took this mid-afternoon?
I would think we've got it covered, but
Okay.
don't mind making the offer.
Yeah, we might as well. Let's do one more quick public comment and then we can close down.
All right. Public, you're all the same from before. So if you would like to make a comment, throw your name in that Q&A and I'll give you permission to talk. And we'll hold out for 10 seconds. All right, there you go.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. And we'll see most of everyone here at Crewa next week.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye.
Take
Thanks
care.
all. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.